So I am sitting here this afternoon with Jessie Pearl, who was one of our original legacy people. And it's my real honor and privilege to be here today and to be in his home and to see the wonderful things here. And we're going to do Jessie's interview for the Legacy Committee. And so we'll just start at the beginning and tell us why you decided to become a band director and what were the major influences in your life that brought you to become a band director?
I graduated high school and applied to the local college. It was 2 bus rides away and very handy. And I thought I'd be involved in the sciences. My doctor sent me when I was in high school to the hospital to observe 2 autopsies, a male and a female autopsy. And it was quite interesting to me. So I elected to take a pre-med or pre-dent course, didn't know which one I'd go to. And I had a year and a half of the sciences, chemistry, physics, a lot of math and English. And I was in the reserves. At a year and a half into my college studies, the reserves were called up. And they determined that I was to become a pilot. So I did my basic training in Atlantic City, and then they shipped me to Penn State College, where I took a few college courses, and they said had I been a student of theirs, I would have been exempt from freshman English. I knocked off their testing. And where was I?
At Penn State.
At Penn State, yes. We slept in a fraternity house, and they gave us a ride in Piper Cub. We didn't handle the controls, but they took us up for about 10 hours of flying over the Alleghenies and that area, and it was very nice. I enjoyed it. Then they transferred me to Albany, Georgia, where I learned to fly a Stearman bi-wing biplane, and that was enjoyable too. I could land it, take off. I flew solo for an hour and a half, and one day after the lesson, the teacher said, "Lesson's over, go back to the field." And I said, "Which way?" And that went boing in his head. I had a lousy sense of direction. So he put me up for check flights. I was entitled to 3. Well, it gave me 5. 2 fellas, one fella said, "You can fly." Gave me to the other guy, says, "You can fly." And then the third was an Army guy, and I said, "This might be my last flight. How about putting the plane through its tricks?" And he did. And he also said, "Well, you can fly. I'm going to give you to another teacher." The teacher was miffed because he had an extra student. So soon after that, he put me up for check flights. And again, I got 5 more, 10 out of a possible 3 that I was allowed. And the last guy said, "No, we're going to send you off to headquarters in Montgomery, Alabama." In Montgomery, Alabama, they wanted to make a code instructor out of me. I said, "Hold it. I used to sleep in that class." And he said, "Yeah, but you took 7 words a minute, and that's what's required for you to be a teacher." And I said, "Wait a minute. do you have a music director or a head of music for this area? They said, yeah. Could I get an appointment with him? And I did, and spoke to him, and I told him I played in high school. We formed a college band in my little 500 student school, and we played at football games. And I really don't relish being a teacher of code. And he said, okay. And he shipped me out to a little 28-piece band in Malden, Missouri. The officer in charge was a wonderful conductor, a Frenchman named Armand B. Couture. I'll never forget it. He sat me down in first chair. There was 6 clarinets and small band, like 28 pieces. And he put the most difficult music in front of me, and I sight read and enjoyed it. One time he looked over when I was playing something in 6 sharps, and he said, having trouble, Pearl? And I said, no, I'm just struggling through this thing. And I don't know what that was, Sakuntala or some crazy thing in 6 sharps, 5 sharps. And pretty soon he retired. And we were saddled with a sergeant who used to drink and took us at concerts that we gave for the camp. He used to take more than an hour to tune us up. And we went to proper officers and said, we can't handle this. This guy gets drunk and he does that, and we're not giving proper concerts at all. And they transferred him, got another guy in, and pretty soon they were going to send us overseas. Overseas, well, we went to Cincinnati to get outfitted out, and they took us overseas in what was then a tender to a German vessel called the Graf Spee. And the Germans, when they were going to lose this ship, filled the engines with cement and ruined it, and the United States took it over and refurbished it and fixed it. We were on the ocean for 12 days. On the 6th day, they announced that Roosevelt had died. President Theodore Roosevelt had died. And he was taking us through this war, and we said, who is this guy Truman? And when are we going to finish this war and get on with our lives? And on this 6th day, the ship was involved in a storm, and the boat was rocking up and down, up and down. They sent us to bed and said, lie horizontally and you won't get seasick. And we did, and we wound up in a transient camp and were sent around to the camp sites, to the tents, to see what we could find as far as our living quarters was concerned. And I found a beautiful anthology of poetry that I kept with me all through the war and read it when I had some time. We were there and ate out of the tin cups and everything and sterilized them in hot water, and pretty soon they sent us to a little town called Mourmelon in France. One day, we walked out of the camp. We weren't assigned to do anything. We were waiting for assignments to go someplace. And we walked out into the village or whatever it was there and came upon a Catholic church. On the side of the Catholic church was a nice piece of marble, and we were in a block of stones in the back of it, and we were told that was a place for men to do their business, right on the side of the church. And we went into the church and looked around at the windows and things, and met the priest, and took us around to show us the history of the religion and everything, and I found it very fascinating. Back we went to camp, and sent to this town of Moormalone, where we occupied the barracks, which was formerly the nut ward of a hospital. At the walls of the bed were two shackles to hold the patients so that they didn't get rambunctious. This was our home. We rehearsed there and played dances over the town. They got girls from different towns, and they danced with the soldiers while we played our music. And at one point, we had VE Day, and we had to march in a 10-mile parade, playing music for the soldiers as we marched through the thing. And everybody was in trouble. The drummers had bloody hands. The brass players could hardly blow into their instruments at the end of the thing, and reed players weren't playing in tune at all. And we survived the 10-mile parade. Then at one point, we had fabulous musicians in this band. A society band leader from Chicago, other people. We had arrangers and copyists and musicians, and we would rehearse every morning. It was one of my colleagues that did the rehearsing, not the band director. He was kind of effeminate. And we rehearsed a tune and put it in the library. Rehearsed the tune and put it in the library, and took that around with us. Then one time they announced a contest of all the bands in France, all the dance bands in France. We were to go to Reims and take part in this contest. A very famous actress, figure skater named Sonia Heine was the hostess of this contest. Our band won. It gave us a week in Paris to play jobs for soldiers. And after that week, they decided to keep us. Glenn Miller had passed away, and his band was not really disciplined, and they weren't doing a service to the powers that be. And they booked us into a mansion a block and a half away from the Arc de Triomphe. Of course, they were army beds, but nevertheless, this was a beautiful place. And during free time, I visited the museums, the art galleries, the cathedrals. I was impressed with Notre Dame, and I have a picture of myself trying to open a book at the American Embassy at the bottom of the Champs-Élysées, at the American Ambassador's Embassy. I was opening a book that had a statue of, what was it?
Jefferson.
Huh?
Was it Jefferson?
No. That's, I knew it before I started. Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin. It was his statue at the embassy. Okay, I did that. And everything was wonderful. One of my colleagues, a trombone player, said, "Would you mind coming to the conservatory and translating for me? I have a teacher, and I want to study trombone with them." And I said, "Sure." So I did. I had studied French for 2 years in high school, and it was coming back to me as I was living in the country. And after 4 lessons, he said, "We don't need you anymore. Music is universal, and we understand each other." I said, "Fine. I'm going to take some clarinet lessons." And I found a Professor Perrier, and this was so funny. I walked in before he finished with his prior student, and the student was playing his lesson, and the teacher was in back of him conducting. The student never saw the conductor, but this is how we studied. This is how we took lessons. But he put me through literature that was awfully interesting, and he changed my embouchure and did things that was good. And so that was over because we were scheduled to go home. The war was finished, and we waited our turn, and were shipped to a transient camp waiting for a boat to take us home, which finally did. We landed in New York, were shipped to Fort Dix in New Jersey, and my dad had sold his business in Newark, New Jersey. It was a candy store and luncheonette, and went to live and perhaps open up a business in Miami. And when he heard that I was coming home, I wrote to him, he went up to Newark to meet me at his sister's house. And I snuck out of camp that night and went to Newark and greeted him and slept over that night. And he took me back to Fort Dix the next morning, and I walked in the front gate, gave the officer the pass, and I said, "You can tear that up, I made it myself." And he kind of chuckled, and I went in, got the discharge, and went back to Newark, and we went down to Miami. In Miami, I loafed around for a while, and I said, I got to do something. And so I applied for a job at a Walgreens drugstore on Flagler Street, downtown. It had a luncheonette, and the job called for a short order cook. And I said, I used to work in my parents' luncheonette. I can make sandwiches and things like that. They said, you're hired. I went home and happened to pick up the paper, and there was an article that said auditions will be held at the School of Music in Miami for scholarships to college. And I said, oh, I can finish college. So I auditioned, made the appointment, auditioned. They gave me a scholarship, and I had to call up the drugstore and say, I can't take the job, I'm going to college. And I was under the GI Bill, and they gave me books and money and an education. They gave me a half-year credit for the year and a half that I only had there, and I only had to make up 2 years and graduated. from the School of Music. I played in the band and in the symphony orchestra. And there was a job opening in Homestead, and I applied by telephone. The principal called me and said, "Can you teach orchestra?" "Yes." "Can you teach band?" "Yes." "Can you teach elementary music?" "Yes." "Can you teach general music?" "Yes." "Can you teach orchestra?" "Yeah." "You have the job." And I went up and started teaching 2 weeks before I graduated.
So your first teaching job was Homestead Senior?
Homestead Elementary, Junior High, and Senior High, grades 1 through 12. I had a schedule you couldn't beat. In addition to that, I had to learn to drive a bus. The school had a school bus that they got from one of the school board members who had a Chevy dealership. He donated the bus, and they sold tickets or something, and this is how they got the thing. And I had to learn to drive that bus so that I could take my band and chorus students to Miami to their contests. One day the mountain came to Mohammed. I had the judges come to Homestead, to my little band room, and evaluate me there. Oh God, I had terrific guys that judged me. They were famous. I can't remember them. But anyhow, they evaluated me, and I taught there for 5 years. And my principal was being transferred to a brand new school, Homestead Senior High, that they were building out in the boondocks in farmland. And my colleague at the neighboring school and I both applied. He and I played saxophone, and we played a couple of seasons of Polish dances together. And when push came to shove, he was going to pick none of us and get somebody else. And the citizenry was in uproars. And he approached me, he said, "Would you teach chorus?" I said, "Sure." And he asked him, he had seniority, he was an older person. In fact, he was instrumental in helping me get started on my master's degree. He took the band, and I helped him with the dance band and majorettes, and I taught chorus. And at one point, my first or second year, I think it was, I put 300 kids, no, 140. I had 2 classes of 70. I combined and put 140 kids on the stage at Miami Edison High School for an evaluation. And one of the songs we sang was "Once in Love with Amy." And the judge said, "This is hardly the type of music at such an occasion." And another judge said, "This is a breath of fresh air." And we went to state contests with that thing. And when we got back, the high school directors of the big schools in Miami, Miami Edison, Jackson, and Miami High, "Can we borrow that music?" That was great. And I was at South Dade for 3 years. We had 1 child by then, and I didn't want to bring them up in a small town. I wanted them to have the benefits of schooling in Miami. And so a new junior high was being built.
2.
We had 2 kids then? Right, okay. And I applied.
What was that school? What was the new junior high?
Filer Junior High
Filer.
School. I opened that school. My first encounter with the students was in a temporary school room in an elementary school. And the first thing that happened was they had some previous experience and they had some books, and I said, okay, let's play this. And I gave them a downbeat, and nothing happened. I said, oh, did you want me to say 1, 2, 3, get ready, get set, go? They said, yeah. I said, I don't know how. I said, this is a downbeat. I said, up tells you to take a breath, down tells you that's where you hit the note. That's where we started. And then we got to the band room, and it was magnificent. It was something I had never had before in Homestead. I had a shack. And during summer, during hot weather, I put the kids out to pasture to practice out by the bushes, and didn't use the band room. Then they bought me a portable, two-room portable, across the street and up the road a piece for that. And I had band in one room and chorus and general music in the other, and that's how I existed. I saw the faculty once a week at faculty meetings. I didn't go to the school. Anyhow, I got the job at Filer, and this band room had beautiful tiers, had double huge doors that opened up, and they allowed me to have a microphone to teach the kids.
Right.
They had a microphone for concerts that would open up the doors, and I would play to the school outside between the two phys ed locker rooms. And it was quite interesting, and it was good. And I had looked at a LeBlanc alto saxophone at one of the conventions. And early in my teaching, I went to the dealers and said, I would like very much for you to handle the LeBlanc line. And they would tell me, we don't have to. We don't have to buy a line of their instruments. We could buy an instrument as needed for them. And the others, Kahn and the others, said, you want to study, you want our instruments, you got to take so many trumpets, so many trombones. You have to take a line of our instruments. So I lost on that. But one day, during a band rehearsal, a child came in with a package, a valise. And he gave it to me, and I looked at it. It said, from LeBlanc Musical Instruments. I said, wait a minute. My advanced band was in there. I opened the thing up, and it was a gorgeous alto saxophone. It was not ordinary. It was built in the Bain system.
Oh.
I had fingerings on that thing that would allow difficult passages to be easy. And on one occasion, I played my beautiful LeBlanc saxophone in an all-Selmer sax section at a convention in Miami. They formed a dance band, and the teachers were the musicians in the band. So this was given to me by a man named Vito Pascucci, who was president of the factory in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He was Glenn Miller's repairman, and he got friendly with LeBlanc and decided that he was going to take a factory in Kenosha and assemble clarinets for them and sell them. And then came the saxophone and so forth. So this is how I did that at Filer.
How long were you at Filer?
17 years. 17 years. I was 5 years at Homestead, 3 years at South Dade High School, 17 years at Filer, and then my principal then was transferred to a school where he was assistant principal here in the Southwest, where I just happened to live. I traveled a lot of miles every day to Hialeah to teach. And I used to teach before school and after school so that the kids who didn't have good facilities at home could come practice. And he asked me to come with him. Oh, I said, well, it would be handy. I said, but let me see what the situation is at that school. He said, I've been confronted with death of a band director and a poor situation, and come see it. Summer band was on, and I went into a classroom, and my colleague-to-be, I had 2 students in the class. That was all. I said, would you mind very much if I looked around to see the band room? And I went in there to the instrument room and looked at the instruments and said, excuse me.
Thanks.
I said, you have very limited instruments. You don't have a full array of instruments. And some of the instruments that you have are broken. They need repairs. He looked at me and he says, what's broken we'll fix and what's missing we'll replace. You want the job? And the situation was thus. Integration happened at Filer and Hialeah, and that was a marvelous experience for me. And then the Cubans came over, and it wasn't too long before they discovered Playboy magazine. The lunchroom let out the students in the back of my band room. I had some windows there, and I could see and hear the language going on between these kids, and it wasn't the best. And every once in a while, I'd alert the faculty and said, hey, get this kid, he's got a Playboy, and they'd go get the magazine.
What was the school here?
Riviera Junior.
Oh, you went to Riviera?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the intelligence or the capabilities or something towards my 17th year was on the wane. And I wasn't getting the quality of music that I used to have with the students before. It started out when they first came over that we had a middle-class, wonderful society, and they were interested in their kids' education. And as it grew with this new Latino invasion, so to speak, they wanted things for nothing. They wanted reeds, they wanted strings, they wanted the instrument, everything for nothing. So this bothered me. And so I told the boss that I'd be glad to come over and teach this school. At Riviera, it was slow beginning. And then it kept growing. The students were strange, and it took 3 years for me to get accommodated and learn them and start producing music. And then we started the Quinn Mesters schooling. Do you know what that is?
No.
The school year was divided into 5 parts. Instead of 2 semesters, we had 5. And we had a lot of students. We kept on growing and growing and growing to where we had to have 2 shifts a day. My band classes were growing also, and we had to have 2 classes, 2 sessions of school per day. And I had the morning, my colleague had the afternoon. And the program built to where I had 60 and 90-piece bands. And LeBlanc would send special guys over to observe my teaching. That was very flattering. And I taught there, and the situation again deteriorated to where schooling was just an obligation on the part of the students. And after 10 years there, I said sayonara.
And you retired.
And I'm living happily ever after. And Mike, you can get up.
So a lot of the challenges back then were just as South Florida began to change, and language barriers and things like that also were pretty prevalent back then.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was, but not with the students. They learned fast.
Did they?
Yeah.
So in your career, were there any real pivotal moments that brought you your musical success? You experienced success every place you were.
My students. You could tell by their eyes that they wanted to learn. And they inspired me.
I think you probably inspired them too.
Maybe.
Maybe, pretty sure. In terms of all of your experiences, we have a lot of young directors today, and we always encourage our young directors to visit this Legacy website that your interview is going to be posted on. Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Just work with the kids. They want to learn. You got to teach. Don't loaf. Don't slack on that. And one most important thing, if you didn't prepare yourself by learning all the instruments, you gotta learn the instruments. You gotta know the pitfalls of them. You gotta experience playing. Even though there's a college course in it, you still have to learn the methodology of correct playing, reed making, embouchure, posture, all those things.
That's a lot to learn.
And sight read. Sight read. That's how I got my job. That's how I got my scholarship. Sight read.
Sight reading. What would you say, Jesse, is a personal character trait that you possess that helped you to become as successful as you were?
friendliness. I like the kids.
That helps, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. In terms of, what do you think that you instilled into your students that drew them to you, that helped them become successful in band, but probably in life too, far beyond where
Perfection.
they?
Perfection. Don't settle for half jobs.
Awesome. As I walk around your house, Jesse and his wife have been married for
65 years.
65 years, and they are both amazingly creative people. So as you walk around their house and you look at everything that has gone on here, there's creativity in almost every area of your lives. So what did you do to keep that passion flowing? I mean, it extended long beyond your years of teaching.
Well, when I retired, I stopped playing gigs. I stopped my private teaching. My wife used to worry about me and my private teaching. I'd go over the half-hour limit. If I had a decent student, we'd play duets, as I did with my teacher at the university. And we'd go on and on and on, and your next student is waiting, and oh, my high school teacher, I was my private teacher for a little while. I went to his house, and I got a half-hour lesson by the clock, including his telephone calls. I said, "Dad, he's not teaching me. I get a half hour. He talks on the telephone." And my father said, "Okay, no more." And I found a teacher in the back of a music store, just as we have some today. And this guy, Gus Schmidt, put me through my paces with methods that I never heard of, and hardly anybody has now. It was just a thorough education on my instrument. And he didn't play. He played an organ that he had to pump with his feet. And he accompanied me on solos. And this was just so wonderful. There came a time in my high school, after I dumped my high school music teacher, to apply for the all-state band. And I said, I'd like to. I was playing first chair clarinet at his band. And he said, "I don't think you can make it." I told my dad again. My dad went to school to the principal. Said, "He wants to try." He didn't say he would make it, but he wants to try. Is there anything against that? Principal straightened out the teacher, and I auditioned, and I made 6-chair solo, 6-chair first clarinet. And at the concert, there was a saxophone soloist that gave a demonstration. And they opened up the session to questions. And my teacher, high school teacher, asked a question that embarrassed himself. "What mouthpiece did you use for this instrument?" And he said, "The one that came with the case, with the instrument." And it was another question that he asked him that he sat down in embarrassment. And that pleased me.
A little bit of revenge.
Well, he did something kind of illegal after the war. He formed a school of music and didn't have any students. He got names and serial numbers of deceased musicians that were there, and he wound up in jail. This is what my colleagues told me.
But your passion for the creativity that flows in your house is just incredible, you know. And I've never been to your house. I've known of you, and you've judged my students for years, but I've never had the pleasure of coming to your home. But the creativity that both of you partake in all the time, I think, has kept you both pretty young.
As far as the listening to the kids in their S&Es, I like to start off on a friendly basis and put them at ease. And I said, oh, look, do me a favor, we warm up a little bit. I'm writing the last student's evaluation. I'll be with you in a minute, but you go practice. And it did something.
Yeah. Warmed him up a little bit in the room and got him comfortable.
Yeah.
Playing in front of you, thinking you weren't listening.
Right.
You're right. You've told us a lot of stories today. Is there one, maybe particular, that you would say would sum up your satisfaction with life as a band director? Maybe your best moment, I don't know.
I was blessed with 3 good bosses and left when my bosses left. I lasted a little bit after that, and the situation just deteriorated to where it wasn't professional.
Sometimes I think, this is my 28th year teaching, and
Keep going.
I know, right? I have a little while longer, but my husband laughs at me too. Well, he doesn't laugh, he gets on me too. The lesson has been over an hour, but our life as a band director doesn't really end in that band room.
No, if the student has
3:40.
it, you gotta listen. You gotta do it.
And you gotta love it.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. Well, it has truly been my pleasure to come and interview. I was so excited when the Legacy Committee asked me to step in and help out with the interviews in South Florida, and I was so excited to call you and to set that interview up. Come sit with him. That's great.
Thank you.
So this is Jess and Sue Pearl. Wait, let me see if I can see you both. Move closer. I can't see you.
Is this a camera?
Yeah, it is. There's
Oh.
a little camera here. And over a little bit more. They have been married for 68 years. 65, sorry. Have how many children?
4.
4 children. They're just incredible. Can I say your age?
Sure.
When I called Jesse, he told me he was 91 years old, and he is just an incredible, incredible human being. So thank you so much for letting me come today and interview you. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, this will, not even maybe that long, this will be up on the website, and I'd love for you to go and watch it.
Look
Thank
forward
you.
to it.
Thank you for the surprise.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.